The life of a CIA agent seems insanely interesting, full of secrets and Hollywood scenarios. In reality, of course, this is not entirely true. 99% of their working time, agents do the same as any office worker. They make reports, work at computers and count the hours until the break. But in 1%, truly insane operations flicker, some of which are worthy of all possible awards, and the second part is worthy of tribunals and life sentences for all participants. My name is Fred Maximoff. This is case 4112. The events took place in the winter of 1980. Near East. Islamic Republic of Iran. It was there that on January 28, CIA agent Tony Mendez woke up in one of the hotels. Those who know the history of Iran will immediately question this fact. After all, in February 1979, a year before these events, the Islamic Revolution ended in Iran. As a result of which the monarchy there was overthrown and the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran began with radically different laws. This is a story for a separate video, but it is important for us that the relations with the United States of the young state did not work out. The former Shah of Iran fled to the United States. The United States refused to extradite him. At that time, the mood throughout Iran was more than anti-American. But let's go back to our agent and find out that he forgot there. Not only is he an American, but also a CIA agent. It's all about the refusal of the Republic of Iran from the Western model of democracy and the oppression of all US citizens in Iran. This is what culminated on January 4, 1979 in the hostage-taking of the entire US embassy. 66 people were captured by Iran, which demanded an exchange for the deposed Shah Pahlavi. The United States could not stand such a blow to its reputation, but it resulted in even greater disgrace. Not wanting to negotiate with Iran, the US decided to release its citizens by force. The special operation Eagle's Claw was developed, according to which special forces landed in helicopters in the desert of Iran. Then the special forces in cars had to get to the embassy, deal with the guards and take out the hostages in the same helicopters. Given that this was not a backward country, but it was a multi-million Iran, where even ordinary citizens did not support the United States, this idea was rather optimistic. So it turned out that because of the hastily invented special operation and the ambitions of politicians, everything did not go according to plan. The landing point in the desert was right next to the highway. The special forces immediately ran into locals and all secrecy self-destructed. In addition, some of the helicopters broke down. One helicopter even crashed into a tanker plane while refueling. This claimed the lives of 8 crew members. On the ground at that time, the military managed to burn down an Iranian fuel truck and seize the bus. In general, the Eagle Claw plan failed in a shameful way and, as a result, leaving the bodies of dead comrades and even helicopters, the special forces fled on the remaining planes. But the special operation Eagle's Claw failed only on April 24, 1980. And our CIA agent, Tony Mendez, is still in Iran. After all, it is still January 28, which is a few months before Operation Eagle Claw. What is he doing here? The fact is that not all embassy employees were captured by the Iranians. And we are not even talking about 13 employees whom the Iranians almost immediately released for various reasons. We are now talking about 6 US citizens who managed to escape from the embassy before the hostage-taking. Due to the fact that the documents had time to destroy, the Iranians could not establish the exact number and identity of the fugitives. But they were looking for such impudence. If those embassy employees were caught, they would definitely face the most severe interrogations and a disappointing fate. Then Canada came to the rescue. Their embassy and residences of Canadian ambassadors were located near the US embassy. The escaped employees hid partly in the home of Canadian ambassador to Iran Ken Taylor and partly in the home of his colleague John Sherdown. Iran's relations with Canada were better than those of Iran with the United States. For several months, American embassy workers lived in comfort, but they knew they were not safe. The Iranians already clearly knew about the fact of the escape and hired a huge number of people to collect the papers destroyed in the embassy. The issue of capturing the fugitives became a matter of time. They needed to be saved. The CIA decides such questions in the USA. Since the incident, intelligence has been constantly working on plans to evacuate the 6 embassy employees, but none of the plans have worked. And then the same Mendez came on stage, who offered to do more gracefully. Instead of a secret rescue mission, he proposed a mission that would thunder around the world. In detail, Tony suggested creating a whole Hollywood film, which would be partially filmed in Iran. And then, thanks to forged documents, the 6 fugitives will be members of the film crew. And instead of escaping under the cover of night, they can safely fly out of Tehran airport. Of course, such a brazen plan initially caused rejection by the leadership, but after thinking in the CIA and the US presidential administration, the plan was nevertheless approved. Other facts also contributed to this. Firstly, not so long ago, the world premiere of Star Wars took place, and even in Iran they knew how epic Hollywood cinema was and how apolitical the American film world was. After all, Hollywood often criticized the US authorities and did not pay attention to politics, even coming to the USSR. And secondly, the CIA has close and working relations with Hollywood. This relationship is, of course, classified, but there is reason to believe that in collaboration with Hollywood, the CIA made an entire 18-plus movie in which the doppelganger of the communist president of Indonesia was engaged in very adult games in bed. This film was planned to be distributed among politically active residents of the country, to discredit the president. It turned out to be distributed, but this film did not cause the expected effect. There were other stories, but the main thing is important. Hollywood and the CIA worked together. So the already mentioned agent Tony Mendez created a whole story. As an influential CIA agent, and just a responsible intelligence officer, Tony Mendez did not just print fake documents. He really went to Hollywood and started an entire studio. Mendez contacted real producers and developed a real script. News of a Star Wars-defying movie called Argo has been all over the media. The special agent even made sure that calls from the yellow press were actually answered in his studio and given true information. As a result, the CIA-founded film studio received 26 real scripts in a couple of months, and even Steven Spielberg was among those who wanted to work on this film. In general, the hype for a third-party person was raised absolutely real. Next, Mendez came to Iran as an Irish producer, ostensibly for the purpose of scouting. That is, inspecting the location for potential filming. Iran benefited from this. After all, filming on the territory of the country is $1 million investment, which, under the conditions of the economic blockade from the United States, would be very useful to the new government. There were only 2 problems left to solve. The first is to explain how 6 members of the film crew have already ended up in Iranian territory. And the second problem is actually to make people who look like filmmakers out of the 6 employees of the embassy. If the first problem was completely solvable, then the second problem was indeed a serious obstacle. This is what happened in reality. For the first time since World War II, Canada convened a secret government meeting to approve American creation of fake Canadian documents. Special Agent Mendez was left with only the question of training the escaped embassy employees. But this issue was also resolved. Negotiations with the Ministry of Culture were very difficult and long. Even more difficult were the negotiations with the 6 fugitives, who by that time had not gone out for a very long time and were scared half to death. In the end, all the same, they turned out to be a very believable film crew, consisting of a director, cameraman, screenwriter and technical staff. All of them were with real Canadian passports and notes of arrival in Iran. From that moment on, the story of the awakening of Tony Mendez began, who was preparing for X hour on January 28, 1980 at the hotel. Just at this time, he had to pack up, arrive at the Tehran airport and quietly fly to Switzerland along with the fugitive embassy staff. They decided to fly out as early as possible in the morning, so that the airport staff and everyone around were sleepy. The plan worked. When the plane was in the air, the guys noisily celebrated the escape, which went down in history as one of the most ingenious CIA operations. This story formed the basis of the Oscar-winning film Argo, starring Ben Affleck. The film itself is very good, but from a historical point of view, it is not particularly believable. And it's not even about the interrogation scenes added for drama. After all, as we know, everything went smoothly at the airport. The fact is that the film forgets that the main character of this story was the Canadian ambassador. It was he who, despite the insane risk, sheltered the fugitives. And it was the Canadian ambassador, under conditions of total surveillance and wiretapping, who negotiated and kept American citizens without arousing suspicion by the amount of garbage taken out of his house, the amount of food purchases and other important details that could betray the presence of strangers in the ambassador's house. As the Iranian side said, they were almost 100% sure that the Americans were hiding with the Canadian ambassador. But for political reasons, they could not resort to decisive action. Almost immediately after the release of 6 employees of the American embassy in the failure of Operation Eagle Claw, the Iran-Iraq War began, which, along with the death of Shah Reza Pahlavi, whom the Iranians so wanted to return back, softened relations between the countries. Demands for the return of the hostages lost their meaning, and in the context of the war with Iraq, making friends with the United States again would be a great solution. So by the middle of 1980, negotiations between the countries were very tight. With the mediation of Great Britain in Algeria, an agreement was concluded to free the hostages and resolve conflicts between the United States and Iran. As a result, almost a year after the mission of Tony Mendez, the remaining hostages from the embassy were released. Mendez, for a brilliant operation, received an audience with the President of the United States and all kinds of awards. The CIA first classified all the details, but a little later they nevertheless revealed the data. I encourage you to check out this amazing story.